Welcome to Enlightening Entertainment on Supreme Master Television. Today, we will be speaking with executive producer and media strategist Julie Bergman Sender. Julie Bergman Sender has spent almost 2 decades of work in film, producing more than 10 feature films and several acclaimed documentaries. She has worked as a studio executive at Warner Brothers, Universal Pictures, Walt Disney Pictures, and as an executive producer with famed U.S. filmmakers such as Sidney Pollack and Jodie Foster. Her films include Washington Square, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh, G.I. Jane, starring Demi Moore, and 6 Days, 7 Nights, starring Harrison Ford. She is currently executive producer and partner in Balcony Films, a documentary film company with her husband, Stuart Sender, who is an award-winning journalist and Academy Award-nominated filmmaker. Balcony Films works in both the for-profit and non-profit sectors to create media content to move progressive values and ideas. One of their film projects is the current Academy Award-nominated film, The Garden. Balcony Films has also been nominated for an Academy Award for their film, Prisoners of Paradise. Balcony Films and its principals have been featured in major media including The New York Times, Boston Globe, Los Angeles Times, NBC Nightly News, Entertainment Tonight, The View, The Oprah Winfrey Show, and many more. Supreme Master Television spoke to Ms. Sender about the vital role of media and film in awakening the public to constructive evolution.
I started out by looking at my sort of interest in social messaging and political activism. And I had always been doing that, even when I was busy working on features. But I thought that we were sort of at this precipice of this new age of media communication, where suddenly there was this whole other landscape where people were getting their information and ways for people to communicate, whether it was the web or, more work to be done on television, more ways to message to people. And films, take so long that I liked the idea of being able to play in this arena where you could do things sort of instantly.
Yes.
And it was right around the presidential election in 2004, and I started to get very interested in this idea of voter engagement and media. And so the first several projects that we've done over the last several years has really been focused on how do you inspire more people to register, and then how do you get them to actually come to the voting booth. And so we've done a series of campaigns to foster that, and it's been quite successful. We registered, this coalition registered and mobilized nearly 5 million new voters with that effort.
In addition to motivating the public toward political causes, Mrs. Sender is a master at weaving a storyline into factual accounts in her documentary films. She shared with Supreme Master Television that film could be used along with storytelling to help the public feel personally connected and committed to positive change.
In addition to fixing the problems, there's a need for people to see that there's another perspective which has to do with self-empowerment, and that unless we, alongside of dealing with the problems, we're also celebrating the solutions, we don't necessarily get where we want to go.
There's so many new forms of media and new forms of social networking for media to work together. Could you share with us a little bit about your experience in bringing together coalition groups to help them create cooperative agenda, if you will?
Well, of course, honestly, that's still the two things that are still challenging are creating coalitions and getting the sufficient funding in order to realize these bigger projects. But that's all right, because everything that's worthwhile takes time. But I think that more and more certain people are seeing that they may be very good at one particular part of the way they communicate, like print, for example. And more print journalists and print organizations are understanding that unless they have a web presence, they're not necessarily going to be able to sustain themselves. And a web presence can't also just be text, right? There has to be video content along with that. So it starts to become, necessity is the mother of invention. And so there's so much more cross-pollination going on now between people who deal in images and emotion and narrative from that perspective, and the people that are doing, hard journalistic reporting. And it used to be that the journalists kind of frowned at anybody that was doing storytelling.
Yeah.
And understandably, maybe. But now there are many more of us that are sort of talking about how you appeal to people emotionally about the issues that concern them, because they're not just going to respond to an intellectual exercise, and that it's not one or the other. It's the marriage of the two. And there have been enough successes over the last couple of years that people understand that this relationship needs to be built. The world is in a very interesting, complex place. And people are seeking ways to kind of wrap their brain around it. They also maybe want to inform themselves. And documentaries is a really good way of storytelling around things that are real and contemporary in their feel, even if you're telling a story of something that happened in the past. And I've always been interested in documentaries, but I feel like the place that I like to come from is narrative film. And bringing that sensibility to documentaries is an interesting intersection. Because storytelling is really how people feel and absorb and remember, whether it's true or fiction.
Indeed, film can be powerful when the creativity of a storyteller is combined with factual current or past events. This is especially true when it comes to motivating the public towards change. Our interview with esteemed filmmaker Julie Bergman Sender continues when we return. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Enlightening Entertainment. Julie Bergman Sender and her husband, Stuart Sender, were executive producers of the documentary film called The Garden, which chronicled the story of the largest urban organic garden in the United States. The Garden was nominated in 2009 for an Academy Award for documentary films. The film highlights that even in the midst of a densely populated concrete jungle, when communities work together, even the most difficult soil can be reclaimed into a productive source of organic and healthy fruits and vegetables. Mrs. Sender shared with us the genesis of this pivotal film.
Well, Scott Hamilton Kennedy, who's the director of the film, made a wonderful film several years ago which is how we met him, called Our Town. And he has been documenting for several years now this extraordinary story of this 14-acre area in south central Los Angeles that has become a community garden for 250 families, and they call themselves the South Central Farmers. The food bank across the street saw that there was this kind of blighted, empty space and thought that it would enrich the neighborhood, but it would also, again, empower and reinvigorate the spirit of the neighborhood. So it, 12 years later, was this incredible place that was a community center that was feeding many, many families, organic, wholesome fruits and vegetables that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to buy. And then it turned into a fascinating story about the city selling the land back to the developer who had originally owned it, but it had been taken from him in eminent domain. And the struggle over this land to get back into the hands of the developer, that public greening of space, that land has more to offer the people than owning it and building warehouses, and that there is this issue of the greater good.
Balcony Films has also been involved with other organizations, such as Global Green, in an initiative to raise awareness about global warming.
We are working on a full-length documentary film that explores sort of large solutions that are going on all around the country and the world that are directed towards understanding that we're in a crisis, but how are we absorbing that understanding and really creating more holistic models for sustainability around the world? I also think it's people are ready now for this other way of talking about it, that it isn't just an issue of changing light bulbs, and it isn't just an issue of driving a more fuel-efficient car. It's also about adopting a better, more productive, constructive relationship with the planet, which has to be an emotional connection as much as it has to be a practical and physical connection.
Julie Bergman Sender encourages the public to get involved in telling their stories to the world through user-generated video, social networking, and other forms of new media.
Yeah.
Media allows you to reach strangers and friends with ideas and stories that hopefully move them, that they can take into their own lives, that can make them see something slightly differently than they did before. And if you can accomplish that, then you've accomplished a huge amount.
Are there closing thoughts that you would like to leave with our global audience about how they may be able to get involved in constructive media and to help network with one another to make change?
I would never want to advocate for, not respecting the kind of professional level of creation of media, but I'm a huge proponent of understanding this user-generated medium. I think it's extremely interesting. People who just decide that they want to put up their own channel on Facebook or MySpace or YouTube. You know, I think that there's something really empowering about people understanding that they can have an interaction like that with people they don't know. And even though, again, it's not a substitute for professional craft, it's a fascinating time where things are happening so quickly, and these tools are at everybody's fingertips, and figuring out ways to inspire people to use those tools for positive change, whether it's in their communities or in their countries or in the world, documenting experiences they have that they can share with other people that may be thinking the same thing but never thought to take that step to communicate it in that way. It creates a very rich environment for things we don't even know at the moment.
Our accolades and appreciation, Mrs. Julie Bergman Sender, for the wonderful work you do, and for sharing your insights on media's constructive role today. Indeed, we are in an exciting era when humanity is connecting with one another for causes that truly matter, thanks to the tool of media and their noble-minded users. May their good endeavors help to usher in a safe, evolved, and prosperous world for all. Thank you for your presence on Enlightening Entertainment today with executive film producer Julie Bergman Sender. Coming up next is Words of Wisdom after Noteworthy News on Supreme Master Television. May new enriching moments be part of your daily life.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/EE.